Margo Stanford, Vice President with F&M Bank and Chair-elect for the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. I'd like to welcome you all this morning, and we have 300 or more in attendance with us, and that's just fantastic and so exciting. Now, while we wish we could be joining in person today for a wonderful lunch, we still have an exciting agenda ahead of us with two great speakers. And hopefully next year, keeping our fingers crossed, we will be joining in person and enjoying each other's company. So before we get started, I'd like to send a special thank you to our sponsors and partners who helped make our event happen today. Thank you to AT&T, F&M Bank, Republic Services, John Muir Health, the City of Walnut Creek, and the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. So before we begin today, I just want to go over some general housekeeping tips to ensure a smooth program for everyone. Everyone will be on mute during the program this morning. And secondly, we encourage those of you with questions to submit them through the chat box or the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. And I'll be reading those questions to our speakers after the program as time permits. I'd also like to introduce some special guests that we have joining us today. We have members of the Walnut Creek City Council, Kevin Wilk, Mayor, City of Walnut Creek, Matt Francois, Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member, Cindy Darling, Council Member, Luella Haskew, Council Member, and Cindy Silva, Council Member. In addition, we have two past Walnut Creek mayors joining us this morning, Rich Carlston and Kathy Hicks. We also have several elected officials joining us today, George Escutia, District Director, State Senator Steve Glazier, Alejandra Sanchez Isidrio, Field Representative, Assembly Mayor Tim Grayson, Gail Israel, Chief of Staff for Contra Costa Supervisor Candace Anderson, Matthew Wright, Field Representative, State Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Kahn, and Ron Casano, Treasurer for City of Walnut Creek. Other special guests in attendance today include the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce, Walnut Creek Chamber and Visitors Bureau board members Tim Argenti with Republic Services, Jeremy Calabro, Dawson CPA firm, Todd Craig, Holiday Inn Express in Walnut Creek, Ed Del Vaccaro with TRI Commercial Real Estate, Matt Guichard, Tang, Portillo, and Garrett, APC, Patty Hagan, John Muir Health, Corporate Offices, Ron Hermanson with Cruise Holidays Travel Leaders Network, Iman Novin Development Corp., David Meyer with Community Bank of the Bay, Lorna Van Ackeren with Hillendale Home Care, and myself, Margo Stanford with F&M Bank. And finally, final introduction is the past chamber chairs with us today, Mary Brooks with Envera Wealth Advisors with Raymond James, Rich Carlston, a retired attorney, Angie Coffey, a retired banker, Linda Rymack Kohlberg with Linda Rymack Kohlberg, writer, editor, and author, Angela De La Houssaye with De La Houssaye and Associates, Jim Fidelibus with Photography by James Bryan Studios, and finally Ken Mintz with AT&T. So now that we've done the introductions, let's get started with our program. And I'd like to first introduce Matt Guichard this morning. Matt is the chairman of the board for the 2020-2021 Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. Matt is a resident of Walnut Creek and is married to Eileen Guichard, and they have 4 children together. He is a nationally recognized trial lawyer and founding partner of the Walnut Creek law firm Guichard, Tang, Portillo, and Garrett. Matt is admitted to practice before the United States Supreme Court and many federal district courts throughout California. Matt serves throughout the state of California as a hearing officer for coroner's inquest involving officer and fatal incidents. He's also a member of the State Bar of California, the Contra Costa Bar Association, Alameda County Bar Association, and San Francisco Trial Lawyers Association. Matt is a state bar fee arbitrator, a fire commissioner for the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District, a member of the Rotary Club for Walnut Creek, and a lifetime member of the 100 Club of Contra Costa County. He is also a member of the Walnut Creek Emergency Response Team. In addition, Matt currently and has previously served in numerous boards across the entire county of Contra Costa. In his spare time, if he ever has any, he raises kids, chickens, and bees, and is the author of the long-running Civil Jury Verdicts column in the Contra Costa Lawyer magazine and author of Bar Soap, an equally long-running column. But in an effort to keep our program on track and get out of here on time today, and selfishly, to make myself feel better about the fact that my bio is not nearly as long as Matt's, I had to cut out quite a bit of his credentials and scale back on the long list of achievements that he has. I'm happy to provide those to whoever needs them after the program. But in all seriousness, it's been an honor to work with Matt this year, and he's a tremendous asset to the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to welcome him this morning. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much, Margot. I appreciate that introduction. I will say it has been an interesting and challenging year for the Chamber of Commerce here in Walnut Creek. We have survived, indeed, and we have changed. We have learned, we have been saddened, we have been inspired as all members of our Chamber of Commerce and as citizens of our fair city. We now have much to celebrate and many reasons to remain hopeful. Our businesses are reopening, our hospitals are less crowded, and vaccines are going into the arms of our community members. I will say, as I reflect on my tenure this past year, I cannot help but be struck by several noteworthy events which give me some pause. Marcy retired after 40 years on my watch. Jay retired after 30 years on my watch. The pandemic caused many of our local businesses to close and the owners to retire. And even the police chief retired on my watch. And that's just the short list. As you might imagine, I've developed a bit of a complex as my time as chair comes to a close. I'm hopeful that none of you noticed. Perhaps it's something I said. Fear not, however, we have a strong chair-elect in Margot who is poised to take the reins from me in the near future. Speaking of taking over, we are on the final stages of the process of hiring a new chamber CEO. No small feat given the exemplary work of Jay over the past 30 years. Difficult to replace such a person. A Chamber of Commerce committee headed by Margot has been working with a nationally recognized search firm, and we are just putting the final touches on the fruitful search. That is, however, all I can say for now, because there are some matters that we need to finalize. At the start of most of our Walnut Creek Chamber meetings, I like to read the Chamber mission statement. I won't bore you with it here this morning, but I will say, not only does the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau advocate business matters of our members, it also, and I quote, strives to enhance the quality of life throughout the city of Walnut Creek, the county of Contra Costa, the state of California, and the United States. Our role and our vision are broad and all-encompassing. In partnership with our members, the citizens of our city, the citizens of the entire region, the city of Walnut Creek downtown, our schools, colleges, and universities, and all the stakeholders who seek to enhance the quality of life, as set out in our mission statement, we welcome you. For just a few moments, I want to tell you about the Chamber. The Chamber is a strong and vibrant organization made up of a number of components. The Chamber itself, as we think of business members, including in excess of 45 nonprofit organizations with a strong and dedicated staff, Marilyn, Sean, Lynn, Linda, Tanny, Marcy, Jay. That is what most of you think of when you engage with the Chamber. We have a visitors bureau dedicated to the hospitality industry. We have hotels, motels, bringing businesses, people, tourists, shoppers, students into our community. Heads on beds is a term they use, and that's what we're striving to do. And Nicole, a staff member of the Chamber, with her energy and vision, is tasked with working at that visitors bureau. We have the Shadelands, a committee of the Chamber. At one point, there was a 40% occupancy rate. We've gotten it down to 13%, and we are quite pleased with that. And it's another jewel on our necklace. With Angela, a former chair, leading the way, and Linda Rymack-Kohlberg writing the Shadelands newsletter. Read it, you will be amazed. We have our foundation, a wonderful vehicle for events and revenue enhancement. And we're just starting to scratch the surface of the use of our foundation. And we have WALPAC. It's our political action committee that has been very busy in the past few years. All these parts and more make up your chamber. Managing them takes time, talent, and hard work. Thanks to our very talented staff and volunteers. Now let's take a look back at 2020, the good and the sad. We will then look towards the future. Recall March 16th of 2020, the shelter in place. Nothing like it in memory. A devastating impact on our business community and our city. I can only think of the drills at Buena Vista School when I was a boy, when we had to hide under our desks in training for that, what many thought was the inevitable atomic bomb attack. But we did survive, and we will survive these times. I appreciate it's difficult with the seemingly endless openings, closings, reopenings, and reclosing. On a very positive note, our 2020 East Bay Women's Conference went on without a hitch, the best ever, as we like to say each year. But we got it in person with 600 plus people just before that shelter in place. Marcy and her team of dedicated volunteers did a masterful job. Our regionally recognized Leadership Contra Costa, and recall at one time it was called Leadership Walnut Creek, but it's grown so great. Started with a very strong class, and thanks to Marcy and her staff, the graduation is recently taking place. And incredibly, albeit a little delayed. But think of it, it is our 33rd leadership class. 33. 33 years, community leaders from throughout our region have participated in our leadership. Our Back to Business seminars, we listened and we heard. We had Chris Thornburg, somebody speak from SBO on COVID loans. We had a BART executive talking about transportation in our region. We talked about the half-cent sales tax and had presentations. We had issues as to our restaurant owners. And amazingly, at one point, we had approximately 243 restaurants in our city. We had a landlord and tenant presentation, how to deal with COVID, and the idea that perhaps you can't pay the rent or you can't collect the rent. Our Civic Affairs Committee thrived with Ron at the helm and with his team in place. Throughout this past year, throughout the pandemic, many interesting and highly beneficial presentations. All of us learning to navigate with Zoom. The Zoom signature statement, we all recall. You're on mute, you're on mute. Oh, excuse me, yes. Our business communication and social media announcements, our certificates of origin to support our local and regional companies in the international market. And yes, we have many members who operate in the international market. Our networking shifted from in-person to virtual, and in many ways made it easier to connect. Our blinks, monthly bashes, new member orientations, soon to launch our unique one-on-one networking. Regular meetings with the county, with the state, and with federal elected officials. and thinking of our board meetings with our very capable and forward-thinking Dan Buckshire, city manager, appearing at every one of our meetings to give us an idea of what the city is doing and how we can work in partnership. Last year, Kevin Wilk was our liaison city council member. We now have Cindy Silva, and we appreciate and look forward to their understanding of what we're trying to do and our understanding of what they're trying to do at the city in this wonderful partnership. We rewrote and updated our employee handbook at the chamber. We designed and distributed open for business signs that you saw throughout our city and our region. And we did that in partnership with the city and with downtown. We sponsored blood drives during this desperate time when blood was so desperately needed. We continued our ribbon cuttings. And yes, indeed, businesses did open during the pandemic. Our political action front on that front. We listened to advocates and we took positions and leadership on local and regional tax issues. We conducted candidate forums. We endorsed local and regional candidates, and we listened to and heard from our members and our citizens. Our own Walnut Creek magazine with Pam at the helm talked about what was happening in our fair city. Indeed, we have challenges. We lost some events last year. We're hoping to get those back this year. Our very signature event, the Walnut Creek Chamber Art and Wine, had to be canceled. Walnut Creek on Ice, which we do in partnership with our partner, Walnut Creek Downtown, had to be canceled. Our Oktoberfest, also in partnership with Walnut Creek Downtown, had to be canceled. Our international trips and our national trips had to be canceled. Our East Bay Women's Conference, however, has pivoted to a 5 virtual part series, reimagining that signature event. And that's a term we have to think about in these pandemic times, is reimagining and pivoting. And we've done that with Marcy at the helm once again. We're looking forward to that wonderful East Bay Women's Conference by virtual presentation. Leadership slowed a bit, as I said, but due to the pandemic, but we still will finish. And indeed, we will start another leadership contra costa. Our budget here at the chamber was devastated. Our revenues dropped approximately 60%, principally due to the cancellation of our signature events. The good news is we had a 90% renewal rate of our members, and that's remarkable. We had to impose 20% staff reductions, compensation across the board. And we're working to restore those cuts to our hardworking and dedicated staff. And think of our staff members working extra hard and going above and beyond and doing many tasks that originally weren't their tasks, but all sharing. We had to access our reserves in part as part of our budget. And I like to say it was a great deal of forethought some years ago on the part of Jay and his staff to create and fund a reserve for precisely the reasons what we have here today. The pandemic, the ability to thrive, the ability to dip into our reserves and keep this the dynamic organization that it is. I mentioned Shadelands, and there had been vacancies. We moved it from 40% to 13%. It's creeping up a bit now because some businesses indeed have gone out of business. But on the positive side, we have COPA, the likes of which there is nothing else in the world except in Germany. The Sports Center, the National Basketball Association has a presence here in Walnut Creek. The Shadelands is home to a regional medical population, a regional medical destination for healthcare. We have our own homegrown John Wilke. We have Kaiser, both of whom have representatives on our board. We have Bass, and Bass was represented on our board, and we anticipate it will be again in the future. We have UCSF. We have Benioff Children's Hospital. We have Stanford. We have Muir Orthopedics, and many more, all populated in our city and many based in our Shadelands. Our CVB had a devastating loss of revenue, a precipitous drop in those revenues because obviously people were not coming into the city and staying in hotels. Some mitigated by traveling nurses, perhaps construction people, but it was not sustainable for many, and many of them actually closed. The good news is we see the light at the end of the tunnel again for rebuilding. We see another new hotel that's in the stages of being constructed off of Lawrence Way at some point. So the news is good. The foresight of the chamber maintains a fund to help those hotel owners in times of need. And we have new data-driven marketing on the way. The future is bright. We've just gone through our annual new member committee decisions and presented our new members to the board. And I'd like you to keep in mind, our board is not a static board, it's a dynamic board. And what I mean by that is new members come on, members term out, so we always have new blood. An example of we have a newer, younger member, Chantel, who raised some issues with me of concern to her and our community. And she and I worked towards resolution, and we're still working on that. That was not enough for her. She came up with a number of ideas that she thought we could use to help our citizens and help our businesses. And she made a presentation to the board. And we're working on implementing the ideas that she brought to us. Chamber involvement and interest in substantial social justice concerns. We are, as well as chamber members, we are citizens of this city. And we've listened to the voices of our younger members, our older members, our Rossmore constituency. And we have listened and we have acted. We in the business community have heard and understand the concerns of our member businesses, as well as those who wish us to hear their social justice concerns. We have a gathering place here in Wilke, so aptly named Civic Park, for the free and fair expression and exchange of ideas. And we welcome people to come to our city and go to our Civic Park and exchange ideas, just as when our nation was started. And throughout the country and throughout parks such as ours, citizens gathered to discuss issues of importance. We're working with the city to continue to not only address the concerns of all our stakeholders, but work towards adding our voice to addressing those concerns. We learned new words this past year: Zoom, mute button, reboot, virtual event, pandemic pounds, and I got a few of those. Online classes, Peloton, huh? Our hardware stores and our home improvement centers thrived this past year. In fact, I can recall a number of times having to stand in line to go into the Walnut Peak hardware. Long delayed projects were suddenly started and completed. We cleaned out our attics and our garages. Many important issues came to the fore. We recognized mental health issues. We listened and we heard. So we have worked with the city and many of our nonprofit members to reimagine how we deal with that important issue, because it impacts us all. We have recognized our homeless issue hand in hand with that mental health issue. We have listened and we have heard. Reimagining our approach, the Trinity Center, what a unique place in the entire Bay Area, unlike anything else in the region, and a member of our chamber, because it impacts us all. Reimagining how we do business, our restaurants, our salons, our retail, our parking, our sidewalk dining. We listened and we heard, because indeed it impacts us all. We are listening when our citizens and members talk about growth. We know our Rossmore citizens want to be heard about growth. Our Northgate neighbors want to be heard. Our downtown members want to be heard. And we have heard them all, because it indeed impacts us all. I recall as a young boy when the sign on Mount Diablo Boulevard, as you enter from the west into town, when that sign was changed upwards to 4,800 people. I don't say 48,000 people. I say 4,800 people. Walnut Creek was growing back then. Growth is not a dirty word. Done with thought, done with input from our citizens, done cleanly and with our stakeholder members. Our children can live and work in our city instead of a long commute into San Francisco or down to Silicon Valley. We have BART. We have 2 BART stations. Don't tell Pleasant Hill about that. We have two BART stations with the opportunity to grow and develop commerce between those two transportation hubs. For the future will not require 20 acres for each one of our automobile dealerships. We have space that we can grow. I had the honor of moderating the last two city council candidate forums. I was heartened and I was sobered by the number of citizens who came forward to serve. We listened and we learned a great deal about what concerns our members and our citizens. We saw the vision for our city and our chamber out of the mouths of those young and those old alike. Heartened by so many young candidates with grand and doable vision for our city. And I say to them, get involved, join commissions, go through our leadership Contra Costa, join our chamber, and you will succeed. Our city is the shining light in our region. This is where many want to open businesses, start a family, educate themselves, and educate their children. We cannot, however, be smug or arrogant. We must unselfishly listen and hear what others have to say about our good fortune. Learn from that because it impacts us all. I like the words reimagine and pivot, as you might tell, because if nothing else, these trying times have taught us to reimagine our businesses and to pivot towards success, and pivot when we must. I will close now and remind all of you, we will recover, we will grow, and we will prosper. And we can only do that with your input and your help, so that we can continue to be the gem in the middle of our region, brightly sparkling, our Walnut Creek. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Matt. And you're right, what a year it has been. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to remind everyone that we have the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen for you to submit any questions you may have for both speakers at the end of our program today. Our next speaker is Mayor Kevin Wilke. Mayor Wilke was elected to the Walnut Creek City Council in 2016 and is in his second term now following his re-election in November. During his first term, he led the effort to bring free Wi-Fi to downtown Walnut Creek, as well as the push for the city to adopt 100% clean energy for all city-owned buildings. Kevin is a longtime resident of Walnut Creek, having attended high school here, and is part of a 3-generation family from Walnut Creek. Mayor Wilk has first got involved with the city as an arts commissioner and later as a transportation commissioner. As a council member, he has served on several city committees and serves on the board of directors of the County Connect transit system. He has been a director on the MCE Community Choice Energy Provider and also serves on the statewide Environmental Quality Policy Committee for the League of California Cities. Mayor Wilk lives in the Northgate area with his wife, Jill, where it is still referred to as home by their children, Darielle and Shane, even though they live in their own apartments for work and college. Walnut Creek will always be home. Let's welcome our mayor of Walnut Creek, Mayor Kevin Wilke.
Just like the city and all our residents, the Chamber of Commerce has had to reinvent itself in the past year. Just a year ago, when we met at Boundary Oak for the 2019 State of the City, it was wonderful to look across the packed room and see so many familiar faces in our business community. Now the idea of seeing a room packed with people around tables would give us all concern. What a difference a year makes. It was just 1 month after then Mayor Luella Haskew delivered her State of the City address that the world changed. The first shelter-at-home order went into effect. I want to spend most of our time looking forward because I can honestly say that we have much to look forward to at this time. But let's be real. We can't focus on the future without an honest look back at the year that was. 2020 offered 3 distinct but interrelated crises that were unlike any I can remember in the past. We were bombarded with COVID-19, the virus that most of us had barely heard of a year ago. We experienced the dive off the economic cliff as a result, with so many of our most cherished businesses across all sectors being dealt an unfair hand and scrambling to survive. And in the midst of all being cooped up inside, social unrest across the country landed squarely in our block, with protests and demonstrations amid rising political tensions. Independently, each of these crises is enough to shake a city to its core, but Walnut Creek has found ways to survive. When the need for COVID-19 testing sites became apparent, Walnut Creek stepped up. We worked with the county to find a suitable location before settling on the Ignacio Valley Library, a testing site that's been in place for months, offering convenient testing capacity for our residents with now quick turnaround times for results. Many business owners stepped up and actually offered their facilities as options for testing, and we thank you for the community-minded thinking. Nearly 2,400 Walnut Creek residents have been stricken by coronavirus since we started tracking it last March, and we've lost nearly 60 of those as a result, the vast majority being residents of long-term care facilities located in the city. What experts have learned over the past year, from medications to preventative measures, has improved outcomes considerably for most who test positive. The economic crisis COVID thrust upon Walnut Creek came at a time when the city was finalizing our budget and looking forward to a multi-million-dollar surplus, following a successful year for our business community. Within a short amount of time, we were suddenly having to close an even larger budget gap before July 1st, and our 2020 to 2021 budget was reduced considerably with the plunge in sales tax and other revenues. Thanks to many of you here today, we fought back. You got creative. Businesses that could legally open during the shelter-at-home order found ways to meet customer needs without relying upon old models. You became flexible, and if something didn't quite work, you continue to find other paths to deliver goods and services. We launched the Walnut Creek Together campaign, emphasizing the need to support local businesses. The city became unusually nimble in making code changes to allow for outdoor retail and restaurant operations in public parking spaces and the rights of way. Who knew that outdoor dining would become the only dining for so many months? And that space heaters would become such a precious commodity. The Chamber itself stepped up to the plate with webinars, best practices training, and advising seminars on topics including small business loans, tax relief, and grant programs. The city launched our Rebound Program, designed to cut through red tape that too often makes permitting changes take time that our businesses just didn't have. We promoted open businesses on our website and social media and waived fees whenever possible and wherever possible. And just last month, implemented a restaurant grant program of which I'm enormously proud. One virus forced so many businesses to cut staff and operations, and in far too many instances shut down for good. One community helped build so many operations back up, and we will continue to be there for each other. Last summer, social unrest across the nation hit home in Walnut Creek, and we've seen more demonstrations in our city than in many years. The vast majority of them have been peaceful marches and gatherings that allow our residents to express their First Amendment rights. To be clear, we know we've had some that got out of hand, and our police department has worked hard to find the best path, affording people their right to demonstrate, but not at the expense of others out shopping or enjoying our outdoor dining scene. We heard from some who thought our officers were too aggressive in enforcement, and others who wished we'd done more. Our police department has added additional training to enhance the safety of our businesses and your customers. We want everyone to feel comfortable visiting our shops and outdoor restaurants. Make no mistake, though, the call for social justice hit home here as well. I called for a diversity and inclusivity task force to be created, and with Mayor Pro Tem Francois, we'll be heading that group this year. We invite Chamber members to participate and follow the progress as we work to ensure Walnut Creek offers a sense of belonging to all who live, work, and visit our city. In addition, the city has been a leading voice in advocating for a 24/7 unarmed mental health crisis response team that is run by the county and which Walnut Creek will be a full participant in. This is moving forward through the county and will be supported in part by the passing of Measure X. You'll be hearing more about this throughout the year as we look forward to its implementation. Meanwhile, the City Council didn't stop operating, and the demand for services and programs continue to expand. The Council has periodically met to set priorities for our community, drawing upon significant resident input. The current Council priorities will be discussed again next month through a COVID lens, but we continue efforts to support 4 key focus areas. Fiscal sustainability has long been a priority for Walnut Creek, and it's more critical now than ever. Sound fiscal decisions by this and prior councils put the city on good footing, even during this economic crisis. But we can't be asleep at the wheel. Our emphasis on economic development is likewise more important than it's ever been. Last year, we adopted an economic development strategic plan that we hoped would encourage our businesses to thrive. Now we're viewing how to mold efforts to deal with the economic realities we couldn't have seen coming a year ago. The city's emphasis on environmental sustainability and the needed update to our Sustainability Action Plan, likewise, is now informed by new circumstances. While the plan received less notable focus over the past year, our overall sustainability goals remain critical, with an update coming next week. And our final priority, dealing with our aging infrastructure and public facilities that are in desperate need of updates, continues to be top of mind. Some of our facilities didn't get as much use this past year, but like everything else, they aged nonetheless. Much of our infrastructure and many community centers are nearing the end of their normal lifespans, and it will take significant investments to prepare them for the future. Our council will look at these priorities in early March and invite your input on where we should put our 2021 focus, recognizing that what we think is a solid game plan now can be upended by factors beyond our control. One of the benefits of a highly engaged residential and business population is the steady stream of input means we are not making decisions in a vacuum. As I reflect upon the past year, one thing that's become obvious to me is that Walnut Creek is resilient. We see it in the ways our business community stepped up at the start of the pandemic and never looked back, not unless it was to reach back with a hand out to help someone else. Who can forget the efforts of many restaurants to help feed first responders working in challenging conditions? The city began a Neighbor Express program designed to allow our residents who wanted to volunteer services to be matched with others who needed the help. And I kept hearing stories from people about everyday citizens stepping up to take extraordinary measures without asking for recognition or thanks. With that in mind, I'm launching our city's Heroes Among Us program, and we'll be asking you to consider who has stepped up in ways unheard of a year ago. Every other month, we'll solicit nominations for the unsung Walnut Creek heroes and recognize them online and on our social media channels. We want to hear stories of people who have inspired you in ways big and small. If you visit our city website this afternoon at walnut-creek.org, you'll see how you can nominate someone for our Heroes Among Us honors. And we will share their stories and your thanks. Living in a world where interaction is more virtual than in person, I think it's vital that we pause from time to time, in between Zooms and webinars and virtual meetings, and remember what makes Walnut Creek so special. It's our people, our everyday heroes who go the extra mile, offer the additional hand, and have found creative ways to support one another. I look forward to hearing more stories of our Walnut Creek heroes and helping pay tribute to their good works. Likewise, I continue to be thankful for the good work done by Chamber of Commerce leadership and members. We are losing twin giants at the Chamber to retirement, Jay Hoyer and Marcy Hockhauser, who have been so instrumental in making the Chamber what it is today, and they'll be difficult to replace. I want to take a moment to thank them both for their decades of dedication, hard work, and inspiration. You'll both be missed. The groundwork you have set in place, though, ensures the success of the Chamber in years to come. I know they join me in hoping our look into the crystal ball of 2021 includes continued efforts to envision the future for our business community. Will we bounce back to 2019 successes? I hope so, but likely in new ways not thought of before the pandemic. We all seem to have a greater awareness of how easy it is to lose what is precious to us, and a greater appreciation for all the assets, both physical and in friendship, that we have here in Walnut Creek. Our City Council has a busy 2021. It's my hope and expectation that before the end of the year, we'll return to our council chambers for meetings, and city staff will welcome the public with open doors at City Hall and other city venues. We know you have high expectations and priorities for our city operations, and we're excited to make the most of whatever 2021 brings to all of us. Please start thinking of whom you might want to consider for Walnut Creek Heroes. And thank you for making the time to join us today in what I hope will be the first and last virtual State of the City address. I remain confident of better things ahead and look forward to more face-to-face conversations with our chamber community and our community at large. Until then, though, while we're starting to see some light, we're living the virtual life on Zoom. I'd like to hear your questions and thoughts about the city and how we can help you navigate through this challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow, the Walnut Creek Heroes campaign. What a wonderful way to acknowledge our amazing folks here in Walnut Creek. Definitely looking forward to taking a look at that later on.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the nominees.
Yes. So now it's time to jump into some questions that we've received today. And I'm going to invite our chairman of the board for the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau to join us on screen, Matt Guichard.
Thank you. I'm here.
You're here. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and jump into some questions that we received, and I will direct them. I believe they're to who they're directed towards. So the first question I have, I believe, Mayor, that would be for you, is why is the city providing $5,000 and $10,000 grants only to restaurants and not to other small businesses suffering from COVID? And the second part of that question is, where did those funds come from?
Right. Well, and what a year it was, right? That we all suffered, and certainly our businesses suffered the most in terms of what was happening in just their normal day-to-day lives and being able to serve the public. We wish we could help every business that's out there. We know that they've all suffered. Restaurants do have a unique place in Walnut Creek. First of all, they are one of the attractions that people come to Walnut Creek for, whether it's spending a night out to go to the theater or a movie, or just because of the great restaurants that we have. So they're not just this tourist attraction, but they really generate those sales tax dollars. Also, they've already invested a lot of money into their operations. They've paid a lot already into just being able to construct some of these outdoor dining areas. They were paying into winterizing the programs, and then they had to shut down for 2 months. So they are really struggling. And of course, there's going to be a lot of upfront costs that they're going to then have to pay to be able to bring people back to order their food, and even the time set up that is going to take for them to be able to have their employees come back. So it's not like the county can say, all right, we're ready to open tomorrow, and they can start. They have to put a plan into place to get their employees back. And we recognize this is a real challenge. And so there's grant programs available for $5,000 or $10,000, depending upon if they are a full service restaurant or more of a quick service restaurant. And again, we wish we had the money to help everybody. In this instance, it was putting our foot forward to be able to help the restaurant community as a bridge to get to the point where they can open fully, where there will be indoor dining. And it's just meant to get them there. Where'd the money come from? Well, we ended up having a little extra money at the end of last year, where we had allocated a portion of money that we were expecting to be for our expenditures. And it turned out that we were able to make some of these cuts in costs, as well as be able to see some additional tax revenue that we weren't counting on. And this allowed us to have a little extra money that was unallocated, and we could then allocate it for the business community. And so that's where it came from.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question is, let's see, I read that buildings will be getting taller in Walnut Creek. Is that everywhere or just downtown? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, people may be talking about what is happening at the state levels, where they're looking at some of the different state bills that are coming, as well as the community benefits program that we just talked about at our last meeting. Actually, the buildings themselves, there was a Measure A height limit, and that was put into place in 1985. And that froze the maximum height in any of the areas in Walnut Creek that were voted on by a voter initiative. The only way they can be overturned is through a voter initiative. And these vary. In downtown, they can be 85 feet and up to 6 stories, for example, or in some areas of Walnut Creek, it's at 50 feet or even 35 feet maximum height limit. So those are voter approved initiatives that can change only with a vote of the people. Now, what people may be thinking about is when they hear about buildings that are able to have perhaps a little more density, and there are density bonuses that the state allows for if you're near public transit, for example. And we do have 2 BART stations, as we heard Matt talk about. So if a building is within a half a mile, for example, of a BART station, they can have more density or perhaps a larger floor area ratio. And so some of those allow them to get additional areas that they can build into. And people may be thinking about that when they hear about it. And I should say that the state is pushing forward, as they have for a number of years now, for additional housing within the local governments. Now, Walnut Creek's done a good job. Our numbers are very good in what our housing allocations that the state has mandated where they are. And we, of course, could use more affordable housing. And that's something that also goes into developments that are able to then use that for density bonuses. So we're hoping for that. But the state is continuing to push on these mandates and these bills. And I have worked, as well as the city council, and in fact, just had meetings last week with our Assembly member, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, as well as State Senator Steve Glazer, to talk about the importance of having local governance over this, that a one-size-fits all in the state isn't the way that the community wants to see Walnut Creek grow. We want to have thoughtful opportunities and input by our local residents so that, for example, we're not building a 5-story apartment building on the corner of Ignacio Valley Road and Oak Grove, that we recognize that the development makes sense to have it downtown where people can walk around and they have the ability for public transit and they don't have to get into their car. And so that is where we're really focused on this. And we're very hopeful that the state doesn't pass some of these mandates that would make it very difficult for Walnut Creek and our neighboring cities and every city in California to be able to make their own local choices of where development should go. I hope that helps a little.
Thank you. I think so. I'm going to take another question from our audience, and this one says, Mayor Wilk, could you please discuss the loss of small and major retailers and the impact in dollar terms on the city budget?
Sure. Well, it certainly has been a big hit to our tax revenue. In fact, the tax that comes from the sales tax in retail is about 17% of the budget, and it's significant. The hit to those businesses, of course, are critical. And we want to be able to help them wherever we can. And so, for example, being able to have outdoor dining and expediting that, as well as curbside pickup. In terms of dollars, we're talking several $million dollars. As an example, we were expected to have, by the end of our fiscal year 2020 in June, a $3 million tax surplus. And when March hit and the pandemic hit and we had to shut everything down, we were suddenly looking at a $10 million deficit. Now that came from a number of services, some of it due to our smaller and local businesses, but we're talking several $1 million. And it's something that obviously we felt as an impact in the city and the services that we can provide, but we know that on the personal level for these businesses was tragic because, as we know, many of our favorite restaurants and small businesses have closed.
Thank you. Let's see, another one, talking about the restaurants. We have a comment here and a question. Love the outdoor bistro style seating at the restaurants now. It reminds me of Europe. Any talk of making this permanent in Walnut Creek?
Reminds me of Europe too. I love it. There's not one person I've spoken to that says, oh, this is something that I would just never do that, unless they're, of course, being very protective and for their own safety and health reasons are just not leaving the house. It does feel like bistros. And almost every single weekend that we've been able to have outdoor dining, my wife and I have gone out there and been able to go to one of the restaurants and feel like it's normal. We're eating out again. There are certain regulations that have to be put into place, and there's more discussions that have to happen to keeping this long term. One of the impacts that we haven't discussed too much is the impact of parking revenue. Now, as most people realize, we have not been charging for areas of parking for an extended period. In fact, the purple poles and parking meters still aren't a cost. And we didn't have even the meters downtown in the core area charging for the first several months, and our garages as well. But this means millions of dollars to the downtown parking budget. And that budget enhances the beauty downtown, enhances a lot of what people are seeing and enjoying while they're downtown, as well as the free trolley that people take. And that all comes from that funding. So when we do have the streets shut down, we're not getting that parking revenue. So we have to figure out, can that be made up? And should it be made up? And this is a discussion that the city council will have to review in the coming months. We know that outdoor dining will continue at least through August. That's already been stated. And the Rebound Committee is continuing to hear about these types of opportunities for restaurants and things that we can discuss. I'm on the Rebound Committee along with Councilmember Cindy Silva, and we meet monthly, but we have frequent communication of what's happening within the restaurant community. And so I would love to see this be able to continue if it's possible, along with the fiscal impact that we could potentially see. And there's other discussions too. People continue to ask me, what about just shutting down Main Street and Locust Street? And these are big discussions. They're not the kind of thing that we can say, yes, let's shut it down and have restaurants. So these in-depth, complex conversations will continue over the months ahead. And I can tell you that that the more input that we receive from the community on this, the better. One of the things I can almost assuredly say is that when I was on the Transportation Commission, if we had said that we were going to shut down 125 downtown parking spots to allow dining in the streets, people would have said, absolutely not. I want my parking. And now everybody loves that. And nobody has said, I want my parking spots back.
Yeah, times have definitely changed, huh? Mayor, I'm going to let you catch your breath for a second, and I'm going to direct a question to our chairman of the board for the chamber, Matt, here. Matt, can you answer this question? Will the chamber be hosting the Art and Wine Festival this year in June?
Well, all I can say is we are hopeful. And I like to tell people that's such a signature event in bringing revenues in and bringing people into our city. So important. However, the planning for that is incredible, and it needs to take place, all of the providers, all the people, well ahead of time. So we are on a tight timeline. We are looking, we are planning, we are hoping. And if we can get the okay, fairly soon we'll be able to do it. If not, it'll have to be pushed off. And of course, we have such nice weather during this time of drought that perhaps we could push it off farther into the later months of the year. Being a little facetious on that, but indeed we're looking, we want to put all of our events back together and present them to our citizens. So the best I can give is we are hoping. Thanks.
Definitely, thank you. Okay, another question from our audience today, Mayor Wilk, this is for you. See, we have substantial vacancies in downtown Walnut Creek. Where stand on well, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I'll let you elaborate if you want to. Where do you stand on rezoning some of the retail storefronts to alternative uses?
Well, we do obviously have more vacancies now. We were at I believe it was like a 95% occupancy rate in downtown prior to the pandemic. And I'm not sure what the latest numbers are, but we're probably at about a 15% vacancy rate. And there are numbers that we have heard from experts in the community that talk about us going to potentially a 25 to 30% vacancy rate. So it's significant. And these are one of the questions that we will have to look at. Right now, Walnut Creek is a downtown walking city. This is what people love about Walnut Creek. And it's that walkability nature that has the restaurants and the small shops and the independent stores that are on the east side of Mount Diablo. And then of course you've got Broadway Plaza and the larger chain stores that are on the west side. And talking about rezoning is something that we really have to take seriously, because if we change the way the zoning would look downtown, that could change the walkability features and what makes Walnut Creek unique and a destination city in the East Bay. And this is not something that I nor any of the city council members would take lightly. We have to really look in depth. What would this mean? Now, would it mean if there was a bank here, there would make much of a difference? I'm not sure about that. But what if you were rezoning an entire block or two? I think we could see some big differences, and that may change what people really enjoy about coming to downtown.
Thank you. Let's see what else we have here. Do we have an update on the search for a new chief of police for Walnut Creek?
Well, I can give you a little bit of an update. Our first search, we did find somebody. We were one of 2 cities as a finalist for this police chief, and unfortunately, he ended up choosing the other opportunity. We felt that the ones that would be in second or third really weren't up to what we were looking for as a police chief here, and so we've taken a pause. We've had our interim acting police chief, Jay Hill, and we will be continuing this search in the next couple of months. We'll be getting new recruits for another police chief. And we have certain parameters. This is not a place where a police chief can come in and think that it's not a vibrant city that's going to be just relaxed and laid back. We know there's issues that need to be addressed. And I'm looking for somebody who's a police chief as a community resource officer, and somebody that really comes in and is working hands-on with the community, understands the community, and is somebody that we will take us in for the next many years into seeing how Walnut Creek grows and expands and addresses a lot of the issues, including social justice issues, that we're now seeing.
Thank you. Let's see. We're narrowing down to the end of our questions here, but it looks like there's a few more left. Mayor, this one is for you again. Have you looked at expanding CUP requirements and uses in downtown in attempts to help fill vacancies?
I would say that this would be similar to the last question that we just talked about. Right now, as far as I can see, everything's on the table. We're going to have an expanded amount of vacancies. And as we know, when there's an open storefront, it takes a while to have a new business come in. They don't just take over the lease and open up the next day, or sometimes even the next month. So we have to look at everything. And I believe right now everything is on the table for these discussions. The previous question about rezoning areas of downtown, I mean, that's up for discussion too. So all of this is part of where we need to look at for the future.
Thank you. And looks like this is the final question we have. This is directed to the both of you. A youth-driven eco-art green rebound campaign is being proposed for downtown businesses with no staff or city funds required. Do you think the city, chamber, and businesses will actively support such a initiative?
Matt, why don't you take that first?
Well, all I can say is absolutely. It's something that we love about the city of Walnut Creek. We certainly love about the chamber. And just as I had mentioned during my little chat, people with new ideas, reimagining things, pivoting, and that's precisely what this is. So we very much look forward to citizens with their new ideas coming into our city, being in our city, and expanding the arts, the ability to live and work in our city, and make downtown the beautiful place that it is. We certainly have Walnut Creek downtown that does a great deal of work to get posters up and paint things and do all of that. And they are a partner of ours. We like to work hand in hand with them. So I will just say, once again, absolutely.
And as far as the city and myself, I love this. We've got a youth commission that comes up with great ideas. I'd love to continue to have the youth commission be a part of everything that the city does, being able to get that different voice and a different demographic that is the future of Walnut Creek, California, and America. When we talk about eco art, ecology and the environment, something very, very close to me and near and dear to my heart. And we talked about the sustainable action plan that we're updating for 2030 previously. The green, anything green, I think, is an absolute necessity for the future. we recognize climate change and we're doing what we can do to combat climate change. And the Rebound campaign, that's essential to what we need to do to get Walnut Creek back on firm footing with vibrancy. And so I can absolutely see the city being able to help to support in some ways and being able to help publicize some of this. And I look forward to hearing more about it. This is actually the first I've really been hearing about this. So absolutely, let's bring it on.
Yeah, it sounds fun. So I'm going to just wrap it up with two last questions. They're both directed towards the mayor. Do we have an update on when City Hall will be opened?
I wish I could say tomorrow. I am in constant contact with our city manager about this. And as soon as we feel that it's safe and the protocols are allowed, probably means getting into the red tier, and we're close. We have a couple of metrics to hit, but we are getting there. And as soon as we're able to, we're already talking about other opportunities. If we could do it in a theater in the Leisure Center, for example, and we have proper social distancing and people wearing masks, I think we can get there soon. I'm hoping. I would anticipate that this is that by this time, well, definitely by this time next year, but by the time we come to summer, we will see a lot more things in a normal venue as we've had in the past.
Well, you made my transition to the next question an easy one. So the next question and the final question for today is, have we discussed the future of the Leisure Center? And when can we get an idea of what to expect with it reopening for either rentals or perhaps even an audience?
Right. Well, again, this is something that's going to be based upon the state mandate and county health protocols. So we're continuing to work very closely with the county and understand when these kind of places can open. I can't give a date right now. We're going to have to see when we're into these different tiers. I think we can all understand that theaters where we're packed in 300 or 800 seats, or going to even outdoor baseball games with 50,000 people is probably a little bit further off. I would love to say that we're going to be having these performances within a few months at the Leisure Center, even by the end of the year, and I just can't. However, we do have a plan in place to see how can we be able to have people come with tickets and sit by families. So the families are sitting together and maybe they're 6 feet apart from other people that are watching it. And these plans are evolving, and we're continuing to talk about how we can open the Leisure Center safely. So I can say that we do have plans to open the Leisure Center prior to being able to have 300 people sitting in the theater.
Thank you. I know we're all eager to get back into the way life used to be. So thank you both for your time today. So in closing, I just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. We wish we could be in person enjoying a wonderful lunch together, but we hope next year that we'll be able to do so. And I'm staying optimistic that we can. Before we end, I just want to again thank our sponsors that made our program today another successful one. And those include AT&T, F&M Bank, John Muir Health, Republic Services, of course, the City of Walnut Creek, and the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. And I just want to remind everyone, like Matt Guichard said earlier today, we do have the East Bay Women's Conference, the reimagined version, coming up in March. It'll be March 2nd. Registration is still available on the Chamber's website. I encourage you all to take a look at that and attend. It's definitely going to be another wonderful event. So thank you all for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful, lovely rest of the day.
And wear a mask.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Take care.